a little bit Mine's a little bit different based off of, well, my story comes from Canada. So I've been an Amazon seller, but I prioritize .ca, which is a very backwards approach if you think about it for a lot of brands and so forth. And where I specialize and where we help a lot of businesses is how do you get these US brands into the Canadian market? So what I wanted to just go through and spend 10 minutes is how do we get into Canada? When's the right time to get into Canada and what the overall strategy looks like? So there's a couple key benefits, right? Like as a new business, we call Canada there's an approach that we call the Canadian cowboy approach. Yeah. So some brands, Ramiro, that you'll love this one, is that US can be very competitive to launch a product. As you guys all know, it's not an easy market to get into. So what some sellers do is that they'll use Canada, which is like if the US is like the big league, like the NFL, Canada is like it's a small business, so it's very easy to scale up and get demand there. Advertising's cheaper, there's less competitors. So some sellers, what we've seen, they'll try 2 or 3 products in Canada, see how they work, find the winning formula, and then roll those into the US because you need bigger budgets for the US. So we call that the Canadian cowboy approach. And I'll build a kind of a playbook of when we get brands into Canada, what the right fit is. So traditionally, these are US businesses. You probably have at least probably $1 million in sales, right? Like once you get that first million on Amazon.com, you're a powerhouse. You'll be an absolute killer. Canada and these international markets usually come afterwards. Chris, we're currently preparing to sell on .ca, established business number. Chris, I got you covered. I'm going to nail that in 5 minutes from now. I'll give you the 101 directly. So usually these brands are doing over $1 million a year. And I think the reason for that, and Crystal, when we start talking about Dubai and these other channels, is that obviously .com's it's a massive mothership. Yes, it's very competitive. And Canada, it can be probably like 5 to 10% for most people. So if you do $1 million a year on .com, Amazon.ca should produce $100,000 a year in terms of new revenue. So I think the big push of why brands are focusing on it now is that okay, the US market's got very competitive, right? They're spending a lot of money. How do we open up new customers? Do we spend more money on ads? Do we expand to TikTok? Or do we just find more Amazon markets to tap into more customers? Canada's 30 million customers that could potentially tap into. The UK, EU, Dubai, like these are massive markets that you don't need to triple your ad spend to get new customers. You just need to figure out the nuances. And yes, there's challenges, but if you can get over those hoops, 9 out of 10 sellers are well, we can call it what it is. They're too lazy to do it at the end of the day. So there's these little barriers of entry that I think people think are a little bit too overwhelming, but in reality, like it's a huge leg up. And I do think any brand going into 2024, 2025 that doesn't have an international thought process is doing themselves a major disservice. I think in 3 years from now, it will become a norm that you are operating on a global scale because of how easy Amazon's making it, and you will be left behind. That's a very hard opinion that I have. But let me go into a 3 quick playbook of how we get brands into Canada. Chris, to your point. So to get into Canada, you need what's called an NRI. Ramiro, Crystal, Nick, you guys ever heard of that before? NRI? No.
No, but it sounds an awful lot like an RFC. So, which is the Mexican
Not
version.
as scary. Not as scary. So NRI, what it means non-resident importer. There's a very big stigma for Canada that you need a business. You're gonna have to buy a home up here. You're gonna have to move the family. Like, that is not the case, right? So what's called an NRI, it's called a non-resident importer. What this allows you to do is ship into Canada without actually having a business up here. So it takes a day. There's a brokerage company that will do it. We'll help we do it. It's usually around $150, $200. Very easy to do. And you can usually get approved in a couple days, right? And all that does is now it says it's a stamp of approval to say, hey, Ramiro, you can now officially sell your products in Canada. You're claiming the product to come into the country. Very simple. Chris, to your point, exactly what you need. So most brands, they're operating on what's called like NARF. So before they properly get into Canada, Ramiro with the nod and Nick and so forth. So how NARF works for US is North American Remote Fulfillment. I'm going to be throwing out a lot of language and terms here, but just hang on tight. So North American Remote Fulfillment, that means that basically as an Amazon seller, if you toggle this on your Seller Central for US, it basically like offers your product in Canada and Mexico. It's a horrible experience. Ramiro, you can chime in on how bad it is in the Mexico market. It's
I
rough.
I could talk about how much I hate NARF as a consumer all day. Are you joking?
It's
Like waiting 7 days and paying import duties and paying. No, thank you. I will not be buying your product. Have a wonderful day. So
it, and most sellers in the US don't even know that, right? So like in Canada, so if your product's listed under NARF, people are like, oh, well, Canada just sucks as a market. No, the program sucks with NARF, right? What it looks like for a customer is we'll see it on Amazon.ca as we're shopping, but it usually is like 5 to 8 days. There's duties and import when it arrives. So when it arrives, someone's gonna knock on my door. It happened last week. I still buy off it. I hate it, but I still buy off it because you guys aren't listed on .ca. If you guys were selling in Canada, this wouldn't be a problem to begin with. This is why I'm screaming through a camera. What happens though is UPS is going to come to my door. They're going to come with an Interact machine and say, here's $20 in duties, right? Duties and import fees. We're going to charge you right now, or we're not going to be able to collect the product. Like, just horrible experience. God forbid something goes wrong with your product. That customer is never coming back. So this North American remote fulfillment, in the UK, it's a lot different, right? That's a whole different beast. I'll let the wizards in the room talk about it. But in Canada, in the US, what's focusing on is that instead of doing NARF, you actually can get product directly to the FBA hub. On average, so if you are enrolled in NARF, there's a really quick rule of thumb. Go into your Amazon sales report. You'll be able to filter by sales coming from Canada and Mexico, from these international. If you're getting any orders through NARF, you are light years ahead because NARF's a horrible system. If you're getting customers that are buying and waiting 7 days, that's a winning product. But on average, if you send stock to Amazon FBA Canada or Amazon FBA Mexico directly, which means you get Prime Badge, on average, it's an 8x lift. So, Crystal, if there's a brand in the US that does, call it $10,000 a month with this Amazon North American remote fulfillment using the US stock, if you send it to Canada directly or Mexico, that 10,000 becomes 80,000. Like, it is a massive, massive jump. So I just wanted to set the stage of how much opportunity is there. NARF isn't a realistic gauge of how good these global markets are. So it's a good tester. Like, you can get your feet in the water and see if there's customers interested. But if there's immediate demand, send stock. Going back to my point, part number one, NRI, set up your NRI. It takes a week. Step number two is you can either ship directly to an FBA warehouse in Canada, right? So you can toggle on your Seller Central, C.ca, Chris, kind of like what you're talking about. You probably see it on your Seller Central module. Create the shipment. Our recommendation is pick 20% of your top performing SKUs and send those in, and send 10% of whatever the monthly velocity is. So again, if you have 100 SKUs, take your top 20 SKUs, focus on those for Canada. And if each one of those does 100 items a month in the US, send 20 of each one to Canada. Make it super simple. Step one, NRI. Step two, forecast it. Send the stock to an FBA warehouse. Two ways to do it. You can send directly, right? There's a bunch of shipping companies. You connect us, we'll connect you guys over. There's shipping companies that will send directly, or you can use like AMZ, send the stock to us because maybe it's coming from China, right? Like then it might just be easier to do that. Send it to us, and then we'll send it over to one of the Amazon Canada hubs. So there's multiple different lanes to do it, right? So step two, get your product to an FBA warehouse. There's 101 ways. Bloody Chris, if you need to drive it from Portland, get the product to FBA Canada, just get it done. And then step number three is localize your advertising, right? So this is where brands usually make the mistake. Canada and like Ramiro, as you'll talk about Mexico, it's not light years away, right? But it is a little bit different. So even things like color, it's spelled different in the US versus Canada, gray versus gray. A quick funny story. So we had a brand that was launching in the UK, Nick, ironically enough. And they had this umbrella company, but they were like really colorful. So they were like Ramiro, they were green and pink and so forth. And we launched them in Canada, flawless, like just like the US, very similar customers. So we said, you know what? This would crush it in the UK. So we're like, okay, great. Let's set it up in the UK. Guys, it fell flat on its face. And we're scratching our heads going like, I thought it's the same customer. Like what's the difference between, it's an umbrella in Canada and it's an umbrella in the UK. And what we found, the hard truth is that like UK citizens do not like these bright greens, pinks, fluorescents. That's like it's very shades. I don't want to say darker by any means, but it's a lot more like it's rainy there, right? So they're using these daily. They don't want to be coloring around this like pink umbrella. They want a black, a gray, a tint, a teal. And that was like a huge realization of it's this like localization really matters. So I think you can use a lot of the same advertising strategies, but Amazon ads in Canada is going to be cheaper. There's just less competitors, right? So you can overall strategy is going to change slightly as well, but
I'm
localize
in.
the experience.
I'm in, man.
What's going on, Dano?
All right. Okay. Okay.
Canada will be, phase one will be Amazon, but the overall strategy when you guys think about global, I'm just talking Canada, but we got the team to talk about the rest of the bloody world, is that Amazon will work, but phase two is your own e-com store, right? Phase three could be retail. So don't just think that you're looking at the overall, just the Amazon market and saying, oh, well, it's only $100,000 in Canada, $100,000 in Mexico. No. This also means that you're tapping into 30 million customers in Canada. Ramiro, what's the population in Mexico?
So Mexico is 123 million people. Latin America is 656 million people. Like we're talking
Crazy.
hordes of people. We're talking.
And like in Canada, Amazon is now starting to get its velocity, but a lot of customers still shop on like websites. I know Ramiro, like in Latin America, Amazon is getting its momentum, but brands also need their own e-com store. So again, there's a calculated approach, but I think brands like grossly overestimate how much work or how much costing it is for a brand to go from ideation to live inside of Canada or Mexico. 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like it's awkwardly simple. You can do it for probably less than $1,000. And brands think like they got to move mountains to be able to figure it out. I'm gonna stop there because I don't want to take the stage, and I personally want to learn about these other global markets. But get your NRI, send stock to FBA, and then run local advertising. Tax super easy. That's like a whole different conversation, but it's awkwardly simple because you have an NRI. But my recommendation is set up NARF to initially begin with. See if there's validation of customer products, and then secondary will be send stock directly to the FBA warehouse. I'm putting myself on mute. I'll get questions afterwards, and I really appreciate you guys.
Blair, that was fantastic. And I mean, I hate following Blair. I'm up next, and I hate following Blair because that was such a fantastic, conversation, and it was great. And also, I'm just gonna copy paste everything he said. So,
Yo,
just
Ramiro,
retweet.
I'll just be smiling and waving. That's all.
I'm just gonna retweet his presentation. So I'm going to try to keep it short, which is impossible because I speak infinitely too much. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to try to talk quickly, and I'm going to skip a bunch of slides that I have because I think fundamentally there's a couple of things that we all want to know, which is, all right, like Blair said, what's the opportunity? How do I get to that opportunity? How difficult is it going to be? And then, what are the roadblocks that I'm going to find? And my slides are like it's like 46 slides. I'm just going to try to get through about 10. So let me share my screen.
You're more prepared than Ramiro me.
I completely stole it. No, I'm kidding. If anyone could keep an eye out on the Q&A screen, and if anyone is making fun comments. By the way, Ari is in the. He was raising his hand earlier, Blair. So, all right. How do we bring our brand to LATAM? First of all, I think everything that Blair touched on is super important. NARF sucks for your consumer. I think that's so important to bring up. And what we've consistently seen in the marketplaces is the second one competitor gets in locally to the country, all you see, at least on the Mexican side, is they're number one, and number 2 to like 15 is NARF, 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 NARF. It just becomes very easy to take over these categories, right? And also to echo Blair's points, what we have is millions and millions and millions of people for whom their shopping habits are moving to digital, right? Like we're not light years, away, like you said. Also, we're not, thousands of years behind, but we're maybe 8 years behind. And 8 years, if someone that I spoke to about a couple of years ago, they said, if I could get into Amazon US 8 years ago, I would step over my own grandmother. That's what he said. I don't know if I would be so bold, but these were his words. So, all right, bring our brand to LATAM. I'm gonna skip through a bunch of these. I don't care about any of this. All right, what's going on macroeconomically that's making it so interesting? We're seeing here, and I'm gonna minimize my own face. There we go. What we're seeing here, and this is some data from 2022, is a change in total wealth. I'm going to use my mouse. I hope you can see it to point in the right direction. Change in total wealth of household wealth in 2022. We have pretty average numbers, some negative, which isn't great, and this is by region. Latin America is up 15%, 15.1% in total wealth, household wealth, right? A lot of macroeconomic changes that I don't have time to get into. And I apologize because I am a huge fan of this topic, but fundamentally, there is more money going around in Latin America right now than there ever was. For, we have remote work, we have close trade ties. Mexico, my country, just retook the number one spot for the U.S.'s number one trading partner. A bunch of stuff going on. Basically, there's more disposable income to be buying, and especially in dollars, mostly, to be buying our stuff on Amazon, which is where we want to be, right? So macroeconomically, Latin America is looking for about the next 5-10 years to just go crazy on the e-commerce side of things. On the other hand, there's payment solutions coming up that are allowing us to digitize a largely cash-based economy, as well as slowly developing trust in marketplaces like Amazon, like Mercado Libre, like Coppel, Walmart, like all of these other ones, right? So overall, just strategically from a global perspective, we probably want to be in Latin America. Okay, and it's frozen. There we go. All right, where do we want to be in Latin America? Mostly Brazil and Mexico. I think Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Peru, fantastic marketplaces. Obviously, if you can be the number one seller in any of them, you're going to be going, it's going to be great. But mostly Brazil and Mexico are taking up the brunt of this volume, okay? So what's it looking like in Mexico? Mexico is the second largest e-commerce marketplace in Latin America, where 57% of e-commerce shoppers are buying cross-border. Like we just said, NARF sucks. We do this because we have to, because a lot of the brands that y'all are on this webinar we're looking at, like a lot of y'all don't sell directly in Mexico, and it makes us have to go through NARF and have to give Amazon more of our money and more of your money, which isn't great. Mexico saw an 18% e-commerce growth YOY in 2022, which is fantastic. We'll have 2023 data soon enough. But so far, the market's growing like crazy. And it's expected to keep growing, right? I'm not going to go into these numbers. And then obviously Brazil, likewise, first in Latin America, 130 million e-commerce shoppers. That is the entire population of Mexico already doing e-commerce, right? So,
and Ramiro, are
yes.
these sellers that are predominantly are these where, especially with your expertise here, obviously Amazon is now becoming a there's other marketplaces there too. Ignore my ignorance because I know very little. I know like there's what other channels are there that's not Amazon? I know in some countries that there's almost like an equivalent, or is Amazon as popular of a conversation like it is in Canada and Dubai and so forth?
I love that question, Blair. Amazon is the second biggest marketplace in Latin America because we have Mercado Libre. Mercado Libre, I'm going to go back to this slide. If you see, Argentina makes up 6.58% of total e-commerce volume. Argentina gave the world Mercado Libre. Three Argentinian guys looked at each other and went, dude, Amazon doesn't look at us. Let's make our own. And they crushed it. It's a little bit of a different business model, or a little bit of a different seller model. Who sells it is a little bit more important. But yes, Mercado Libre is by far the number one volume driver, followed by Amazon. Yeah. And then we have the smaller ones. Again, because it's a much more turbulent, let's call it, landscape, because there's less of, because the volume is still less defined, we'll have your Walmart, your Coppel, your Liverpool, and all the local ones still fighting for a spot before the dust settles, right? Claro Shop, like it goes on and on and on.
Very cool.
Yeah, I love it. There's a couple more data points that I think are really interesting. How does shopping behavior compare retail versus online? What we see here is Mexico and Brazil are still in that 10-11% range. So basically, out of $100 that I'm spending of my money, only 10% of it is going to e-commerce. This would sound like a bad statistic until you realize that just means it's opportunity of shopping behavior slowly being digitized. What we're seeing is more and more people trusting the delivery system, trusting the payment protections, trusting the product to actually get to your door, and we have 650 million people moving to buying online. And that's when brand loyalty is probably at its lowest, and it's where we can snag these consumers before they're set for, in whatever brand they currently like. So very, very important to be in Latin America and at this point to be preparing for the future. Because like you said, I think that's something that's really important that Blair brought up, which is oh my God, I totally lost my train of thought. I'm just gonna keep going. I had it and it went away. This is the growth that we're seeing year over year. Like, listen, we know I'm going far too long over time. Mexican marketplace is very nice. Latin American marketplace is very nice. We want to get into Brazil. We want to get into Mexico. We want to get in Colombia, into Argentina, into anywhere we can. All right, how do we do it? Well, there's a couple of ways. There's drop shipping, which is functionally NARF from your own website, right, from your e-commerce website. There is a local subsidiary option. Of course, we could, in theory, all go into every one of these countries and generate a local business entity and go that way. Or we could work with distributors. Pros and cons at every step along the way, right? So, listen, we can do drop shipping for 3PL. This is like NARF. I have a NARF slide, so I'm not gonna go it, but this is almost like NARF. It's great. You get to keep your own inventory. You get to not really think about the setup costs. You get to skip a lot of the tax setup, which is something that I think a lot of us don't think about. We just say, I'll pay taxes in my own country, which is a little bit insane, but this is how it's working, right? But there are a huge amount of drawbacks. Listen, like we said, I don't want to buy your product on NARF. I don't want to have to wait for this product to take 7 days and they get charged at my doorstep, right? I don't want to leave my competitors to take over the market before I get in, right? This is a market share. Oh, this is what I was going to say earlier. If advertising is a lot cheaper and the setup cost is really not that high, I'm just letting my competitors get in, right? Which is not great. Returns are a nightmare from dropshipping perspective. Generally, just say, hey, here's your refund. I don't want to deal with this, right? And the platform costs for
Ramiro,
yes.
one question I had. There was one question that came in. What is LATAM, Latin America? Like what country? I feel like I'm saying it wrong. I sort of know the answer, but I don't think I actually do. Like what the hell? What does that actually mean? Is that all? Is that basically all like South America and
Basically,
Mexico?
yeah. So the way we generally conceptualize LATAM, which is a little bit weird because not every country, it's a bit weird about like what's Hispanic, what's like, but the easiest way to think about it is anything south of the US-Mexico border is what we're talking about when we're talking about Latin America. So from the southern coast of the Rio Grande all the way to Punta de Fuego in Argentina is generally what we're talking about. We're talking about Latin America.
Cool. And can you actually send stock directly? I know you can send stock to Mexico as a whole. We have some brands that send it to Mexico for Prime. What about all the other pieces like Amazon, Brazil, and so forth? Can you actually send stock directly, or is it like a Mexico hub like it is in the EU? How does that work?
So I'll tell you what, this is the whole sort of crux of distribution model that I'm going to talk about in a second. You can't actually send to Mexico easily either. It's tough. It's tough. A lot of these are very protectionist countries, which if we're going to talk macro, you're on the same land mass as the US. You have to somewhat protect your interests. Generally, no, you can't just send straight to FBA in any of these countries. We need to work like in very similar to what you were talking about. You need to get an importer of record. You need to get a local legal representative. You need to get local tax law compliance. It is a nightmare. And I know that sounds bleak. Trust me, I'm going to get to it. But but no, it is very tough to just be able to send products to FBA, which is why NARF exists, why Mercado Libre Global Selling exists. But again, we're not too happy with that. So I'm going to skip over this NARF. All right. You can, in theory, build your own business entity, right? You need someone to legally own the product in the country. You could build your own business entity. But realistically, you need legal representatives. You need local partners. In Mexico, we have a saying, which is the soup is more expensive than the meatballs. El caldo sale más caro que las albóndigas. It means, listen, it's such a headache and it's so much work and it's so expensive. And I don't know what my product is going to perform like there, right? And that gets a little bit daunting. ultimately, this is where I plug what I do. By the way, I haven't even introduced myself. None of y'all do know what I do. Um, I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of GoAvance, and we looked at this panorama and we looked at all the puzzle pieces and how they weren't quite fitting correctly, and we said, hey, what if we act as the sellers, as your proxy in country, right? Pretty straightforward. We said, no one wants to set up business entities. No one likes NARF. And yet we're all stuck paying $15 delivery fees. What can we do to mediate that? We came in and we're functionally acting as distributors. Some caveats. Anyone that wants to know more information, reach out to me. But we take care of the legal compliance. We take care of the pricing. We take care of, listen, you get me the product. We set the terms. I take the headache off your hands. Pretty straightforward. Distribution models obviously come with some downsides. You have less control. You're not going into Seller Central yourself. Contracts, I don't think I've ever signed a single contract that people went, all right, I signed. There's always redlining. There's always like, hey, this is how our business works. Totally makes sense. You don't know that your brand is being represented properly, which is something that we've had to work very heavily on to make sure that you have that visibility. Work culture difference, and obviously enforcing the minimum price is sometimes a challenge. But if you're working with a partner that you trust and you're working with a partner that's transparent, you're working with a partner that really just goes back and forth with you on how you want to handle things, listen, it's like, first of all, you're saving like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in setup and legal fees and all this stuff. More importantly, it's less work on your end. So this is how you can get into it. I think I'm running super long time, so I'm gonna just get to some very quick overviews. Let's look at this.
We like you talking, Romeo. This stuff's fun. This stuff's fun.
Blair, do not encourage me. This is page 19. I'm telling you, this is a 46-page slide. I'm gonna try to cut it short. But we're the Mexican shop. Like we said, Mercado Libre #1, Amazon #2. This numbers, as you will notice, they don't add up to 100. This isn't this isn't the distribution of volume, but rather, hey, do you shop on Amazon? Do you shop on Mercado Libre? Do you shop on Walmart, etc. Right? What we can see here is even the smallest local marketplaces like Coppel, 25% of Mexicans say that they've shopped on Coppel online. This is a broad distribution. Most of us, when we're looking at our shopping habits that were, sort of Anglosphere centric, we'll say, oh, I buy it on Amazon. And if it's not on Amazon, maybe I'll go to their website, right? What we see here is a huge opportunity. And by being in country, like, so if you're hitting, what this tells us is if you're just on FBA or just on NARF, you're missing a ton of places where your shoppers are shopping. Your Google shop results aren't showing up, right? So you really want to be in country, really want to be hitting all these marketplaces, because you know what? These sales, even if it's just a couple a day on these smaller marketplaces, they'll add up to making the country a viable expansion. I already spoke about Mercado Libre. I already spoke about Amazon.
Ramiro, I guess one last question I have before you finish off that last slide. So if a brand's so in Canada, we call it 5 to 10%, like on a revenue. I don't know if you guys have any data around that. So if the company does $1 million a year on Amazon US, like North America wide, when they enter Mexico, Mico Libre, am I pronouncing?
Mercado Libre, but
Mercado Libre.
Mercado Libre, yeah.
All right. If they're doing $1 million a year, what could they expect between Mico Libre and Amazon? Is there like a rule of thumb or percentage of how big the market is?
So I will say we have the exact same numbers, about 5 to 10%, and it depends on how many marketplaces you can get into.
Makes sense.
And also it will depend, and Blair, you'll back me up on this. How big are you in your pond? Because we've actually had 100% equivalency for a small supplement or a medium-sized supplement seller in the US, came in biggest fish. All right, cool. It's actually like 80% of total US sales because PPC is 80% cheaper, right? But in general, rule of thumb, listen, you need to do back of the envelope math. 5 to 10% is probably where you want to be landing. Yeah, look, Mexico's a nightmare. I'm gonna stop talking right now. What I will say then, because yeah, listen, you need a business entity, you need taxes, you need logistics, listen, I'm gonna get out of your hair. What I will say is Latin America, huge potential. we're talking 5 to 10% right now. The goal of getting into Latin America right now is really only for strategic, forward-thinking sort of brands that are going, right, it's 5 to 10% now, but it's Amazon 8 years ago. How do I grow with the market, right? If you would like an assessment, if you would like just more information, if you would like to really get into the nitty-gritty of the numbers and what that looks like and what, the market size is and all these things, absolutely feel free to reach out. If you go to GoAvance.com, it's my dumb face and my dumb calendar that you can book a call with and just go into detail, right? Because I gotta let everyone else talk, and I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just get my stupid face out of here. But
That's great. I learned a lot about Mexico. That's really interesting.
thank you, Blair. Thank you.
I'm curious about Micro Libre as a whole. That's like a whole
you
different,
absolutely
it's a whole different world for me. I have no idea about it.
Let's talk offline. And if anyone's yeah. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening.
Thanks, Ramiro.
Up next, we have Christelle.
Yes. Okay, perfect. I'm so excited that I'm actually talking after you, Blair and Ramiro, because I'm going to make it look like it's such an easy walk in the park to come here into the Middle East. You guys are going to regret having me talk right after you. So for everyone, hey, thank you for joining us. Let me just quickly share my slides so that I can give you a little bit of a heads up. So I'm going to also be giving you a quick geography lesson because I know you guys, most people know where Dubai is, but you probably don't know very much about the Middle East. So I'm going to give you a quick geography lesson and I'm going to give you a quick history lesson about Amazon and the market in general. So how does this work? Okay, hold on. Okay, there we go. So this is what Amazon since 2019 now looks like. So as you can see, we currently have an Amazon Middle East. And in Amazon, the Middle East, we have 3 markets. However, unlike what's happening in North America and Europe, these 3 markets are independent, even though they are under the Middle East umbrella. And the 3 markets are Amazon Egypt, which is number 2, or number 2 in the lineup, Amazon.ae or Amazon UAE, or better known as Amazon Dubai, as well as Amazon Saudi Arabia or Amazon SA. Now, where are these countries? One thing to just let you know, in case you weren't aware, in the Middle East, we have something known as the GCC or the Gulf Cooperation Council, very much similar to the EU and how it operates. And those would be the strongest countries in the Middle East. And 2 of those countries are the countries that generate 70% of e-commerce sales in all of the region. And those 2 countries are what we just saw, Amazon UAE or Dubai, and Amazon KSA stands for Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Look how big Saudi Arabia is in comparison to the other countries. Now, enough geography. Why should you look into the Middle East? This is, what I want to showcase here is not necessarily for people who are starting out, because I do know a lot of people are joining us from Dubai right now or from the Middle East. I want to focus a little bit more on anyone who's currently selling on Amazon. And just like Blair started off with the session, if you are currently selling on Amazon, let's say you're selling on Amazon.com, let's say you're selling on Amazon UK, and you're looking into expanding, where do you want to go to? A market that's emerging, a market that is easy to get into, and a market where, very much to what Ramiro said, you could be a small to medium-sized seller and all of a sudden find yourself coming into a market because it's a new market. You can become a top seller in the market quite easily and quickly. Now, the Middle East is seeing huge numbers, especially when it comes to e-commerce. Well, huge for the size of the market for sure. We're seeing an increase of about 11.5% in e-commerce year on year. And we're expected to get to a healthy $27 billion in sales by 2025 for e-commerce. So just as a comparison, the size of the market in 2020 was just 10 billion US, and then it's expected to grow to 27 billion in 2025. The Middle East also, and I'm going to be focusing on the two top markets for Amazon in the Middle East, which, by the way, if I wasn't able to maybe I forgot to tell you, Amazon started in the Middle East in 2019. So they opened the first marketplace, which is Amazon UAE, or better known as Amazon Dubai. They didn't actually start from zero. They took over a marketplace that was already existing, and then they just flipped it to Amazon. So they started back in 2019, and in 2020, they opened Amazon Saudi Arabia. So as you can see clearly on my slide, the economies of both of these countries are doing very well. Like people are doing quite well. So, yeah, I'm sure you've seen, even if you've never visited, I'm sure you've seen a lot of things online. Population-wise, very different to what Ramiro, Mexico, maybe even Canada. It's not a very big, the population isn't very big. However, we see other positive things, especially the fact that internet penetration is quite high. I've got another slide that says it's almost at 100%, and the population is quite young, which puts it at a perfect population for e-commerce in general. Now, this is my nice looking face because I just wanted to show you a couple of slides of an event. As you can probably see by my tan, it was in summer of last year. So this was the first ever event that Amazon held in Dubai. It was called the Connected Worlds event back in September of 2023. I took those two pictures from presenters from the Amazon ads team because I just wanted to show you exactly what they were showing us. So Amazon is running out of storage, I guess, everywhere, but definitely focused on increasing storage in Dubai and the rest of the Middle East because of the increase in demand. However, the cool number, which I thought was very interesting, is that Amazon UAE in particular is focused on showcasing 100,000 companies, including local SMEs, by the year 2026. Now, why do you care about this number as a seller yourself? Because quite simply, for Amazon to hit those targets, they have to make it easy for sellers to become part of the marketplace, or else it's not going to be possible for them to hit the target. And obviously they do want to hit the target, or else somebody's not going to get a bonus by 2026. So that's why they make it quite simple. And I'm just going to show you at the end just one slide to explain to you how easy it is for you to get started on Amazon in the Middle East. No weird acronyms like what's happening with Blair, just very, very straightforward things. Another slide that I wanted to show you, and these are numbers from 2023, so we're in the beginning of 2024, and those are the sales growth that we are experiencing currently. Just as a reminder, KSA is an acronym for Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this market is experiencing an astonishing growth of 65%. With an NTB. I'm not sure if you guys know what an NTB, what that basically means, but I think this is a really cool number. NTB stands for new to brand, which basically means if you are a new brand on Amazon, you can experience 67% of customers that are logging into Amazon are buying new brands, which they've never seen before, which is astronomical if you are a new brand on Amazon. And as you can see, the UAE is also experiencing quite good numbers. Now, why is the Middle East a cool marketplace for you to look into? Because of the growing economy. This is a very stable part of the world economy-wise, because as you probably know, most of the money that comes into these countries are mostly reliant on oil and gas. So commodity-wise, we don't see a very big problem happening when it comes to the economy. Also, most people that live here love the good life. So there is a very high demand for luxury goods, especially in these countries. And also we find a good friend of mine actually recently told me one thing that just keeps I keep thinking about, because I get a lot of people asking, so is my product going to translate well in a country like the UAE, as an example? what we find, especially when it comes for Dubai or the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, is that there's so many cultures here. I'm sure you guys know someone like a friend or a cousin or something, or someone that's recently moved here because, you know, they want to experience living in this part of the world. So the market here is a melting pot of so many different nationalities. It's like a small world. And that's why we don't really find that there's a problem with a product not being culturally appropriate or anything like that. It's just about checking the habits of how people live here, because it is quite different. It's very fast paced. For example, like one example that I like to give, I don't find DIY products, for example, doing quite well here. People live a very fast-paced life and they don't have time for that. So with that being said, finally, what I want to tell you is the only thing that you actually require to get started on Amazon, either the UAE market or the Saudi Arabia market, is you just need to open a seller account. You don't even need to have a local entity here. You can utilize your current local entity. If you are, for example, an LLC or you have an LTD in the UK, you can utilize those same businesses. And you don't even have to register a local business. You don't even have to travel here. You just need an importer of record, and that's a very simple thing for you to find. And you just need to register for VAT and get yourself a tax number. There are no other taxes here other than the VAT. VAT in the UAE is just 5%, and which is value added tax, very much probably similar to the sales tax in the US. And in Saudi Arabia, it's 15%. So it's very, very simple to get started, to open up your Amazon store and to ship products into the market here. Now, with that being said, I wanted to just give you a little bit more of an idea about who I am. So I'm the founder of Amazon Sellers Society and Sellers Society. Our companies are Amazon certified service providers, an ad agency. We're focused on Amazon in the Middle East since 2019, and we've supported over 1,000 sellers on the marketplace so far. And we do this with the support of Amazon. And you know, we're very much in love with the marketplace here. So if you want some more information, you can just go into Google, type in Amazon Sellers Society, or go to our website and you'll find everything you need. And with that, I'm done.
Crystal, that
How
was
do I stop
fantastic.
that?
Honestly, not only was that fantastic,
Thank you.
you made it sound so easy. Where's my video?
It is. That's because it is.
I hope everyone that just listened to that goes ahead and reaches out to you, because that I think you know what? I think I'm gonna reach out to you.
Thank you. Yes, you should. Just one question that I want to answer from Yoshi, because guys, I really have to run. I do not yet sell on Amazon, but I'm looking for representative marketers for my unique product for the Arab Peninsula, Dubai, and 6 all others. Well, you can reach out to us and we can connect you with the right people for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much. I have to run. Thank you. Sorry, Dano and Nick, I'm not going to be able to watch you, but I'll see the replay after that.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to keep it, to let everyone know, this is being recorded. I posted in the chat. This is being recorded. It's going to be sent out to everyone that's here. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that. Up next, we have Dano, who is going to enlighten us about, I believe this is Amazon Japan. Am I right, Dano?
Oh, yeah, you're right, man.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's perfect. Thank you for joining us. Please take it away.
Of course. Wow. Okay. Let me share my slides here. Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir. We can see them.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thanks for having me here, and thanks for all the people who are joining us right now. It's about extending your Amazon business to new places, new planets, and Amazon Japan is definitely one of those. So let me just summarize what it is about. Why would you want to venture into Amazon Japan? And first of all, like what is Japan about and how is it different? So the culture, number one, is very different from what we know in the West and in Europe. It's a blend of ancient traditions and modern innovations. We have the respect etiquette, which is very important to Japanese people. We have group harmony. We have all the traditional arts and ceremonies. We have this concept of saving face, where people want to like look good rather than, offending anyone, even if it might make sense. We have the seasonal appreciations. We have anime. We have, last but not least, the Japanese language, which trust me, if you try to kind of make sense of how Japanese language works, it's complex because it's not just one language, it's actually 4 languages. So we have like kanji, hiragana, katakana, and English, and all these 4 languages basically can be mixed together when it comes to search terms and descriptions and titles. So one word, let's say Tokyo, can be spelled in 3 different ways, which, for someone who doesn't speak Japanese, look completely different, and you would never guess that all these 3 things mean the same thing, which is Tokyo. We have things like public holidays, which, if we just, here's a table of Japan and US, you don't find so many similarities here. So, for example, there's no Christmas. There's no National Foundation Day and so forth, which is kind of obvious, but yeah. So it's very different in terms of what Japanese people celebrate in terms of Western people. Let's look at some numbers here. So the population in Japan is 123 million people, which is number 12 worldwide, compared to the US, which is the 3rd biggest country. We have a relatively high disposable income and GDP per capita. Less than 30% of Japanese people speak English. That is one of the most important metrics on this, but surprisingly, only 90% of Americans do speak English. So the ethnic groups are, in Japan, 98% of all Japanese people are actually Japanese. On the other side, in the US, I was also surprised to find out that the Germans, I am one of them, are the biggest ethnic group. Average age is rather high. Largest city, Tokyo, is about twice the size of New York City. And we have around 100 million Amazon users, which is the 4th biggest marketplace on the planet. In Japan, we have Amazon as the biggest marketplace with around 600 million users, visitors per month. And then we have Rakuten, which is like more the old school, the traditional marketplace. And then we have things like Yahoo auctions and shopping and so forth. In the US, as we know, Amazon is number 1 and eBay is number 2, and then comes Walmart and so forth. Yeah, so this is just like a brief summary, like what Japan is about and how it's different. Now let's look at the opportunities. The obvious one, the marketplace of 123 million people, which makes it the 4th biggest marketplace of Amazon. We have the high GDP per capita and a strong economy and disposable income. We have a affinity to online shopping, so people don't have to be educated about shopping online, so they are very well familiar with that. They do appreciate Western goods, culture, and brands. So there's, as a Western brand, we tend to have a bit of an upper hand towards local brands in the same niche. Proximity to China. So if your products are being manufactured in China, obviously shipping costs are a fraction, and shipping time is a fraction of what you get when you, for example, have to send your goods to US. Then another one is if you have like an existing Amazon listing in the US, you can kind of bring over your existing reviews so you don't have to start from scratch. And last but not least, so getting ahead of your competitors who have not yet found out about this opportunity can be another opportunity because you could be the first to market. Let's look at the challenges for a while. The obvious one is like how culture is different. I mean, this is just like a little collage of Japanese magazine covers, and as you can tell, they look a bit different from what we are used to in the US. So there is this funny, I call it like a discrepancy between this minimalism that we would expect, you know, from the Japanese, from the tea ceremony and from Zen and all that, where everything is like minimalistic. At the same time, it can be completely overwhelming and super cluttered. So there are like these two things which can be like a bit difficult to bring together, which obviously has an impact on our listings. So not only do we have to comply with the language requirements, because as I mentioned, you know, not so many Japanese people speak English. We have to create our Japanese listings, and also we have to reflect the culture in the way we create images. So so they tend to be much more cluttered and much more dense compared to English listings. Then we have to comply with import regulations. So Japanese are quite particular about what is allowed to be brought into their country and what is not. So if you have food-related products, even cutlery, even things that touch food, they need to be certified. Obviously, health products, some electronic products, toys, and beauty products. So before we start simply selling them, we have to be like we have to find out if we need approval for them or not. Driving external traffic can be a challenge also. You know, when you sell in the US and you speak English, then the obvious thing is to have your brand website, to have maybe a Facebook page and all that. In Japan, it's not that straightforward because creating a Japanese website might be not something that like many of us can do in-house. The whole social media landscape is very different from what we are familiar with. So, you know, bringing external traffic to Amazon can be a challenge. Other things we need to consider is like the trademark approval. So we have to make sure that we register our trademark importer of record. This has changed a few months ago. So now it's not anymore importer of record. It's actually an importer. So we have to assign someone on the ground who will import our products for us, who would technically buy our products and send them to Amazon, which is doable, but it's something that we have to be aware of. Maybe also consider localized packaging and inserts. So, you know, if you have a complex product which has instructions how to use it, we also have to consider to like create a Japanese version of that. So to just summarize, what would be the roadmap? You know, if we had to start, if we wanted to take advantage of this opportunity, number one would be evaluation. So this is something we also can help with, but we have to go to Amazon Japan and just have a look like what's happening with my product, with my niche. You know, what is the like average price people are selling for? What is the review count? And more often than not, I think we will be surprised in a good way to see that, you know, this similar product that like on page one will have like just a fraction of the reviews that we see in the US, for example. But we do have to be aware of, you know, what's happening, the competitors, to just have the, you know, to get the full picture of what it would be like to sell in Japan. Then we, if that is kind of checked and approved, then we can move forward to the import regulations and see if we have to apply for any kind of approval, if you need any certificates to import our products. And then, of course, the trademark is good to have, very important to have if you want to have brand registry, if you want to use A+ content and bind reviews and all that. So then checking your trademark is good. And this is the website is called iPlatpat, which I find funny all the time. So this is where you register your trademark in Japan. And then you get started. So then you just contact your importer. Again, it's called importer, not importer of record. and you find maybe a 3PL partner, you create your listings, you send your inventory, and do like the things that we would do in the US as well. So that's basically like the short and quick summary of what it's like to sell on Amazon and what's important. If you need help with that, you can obviously contact us, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Dano, thank you so much. I think that's very clear on how difficult it is, or not rather how difficult, but you know what you're gonna face on the way in, and what you probably need to talk to Dano about getting into Japan. To wrap this all up, well, before the Q&A, to wrap this all up, we have my good friend Nick Signoriello here to talk about Europe and global expansion in general. I think is what he's expert at, right? So, Nick, why don't you take it away? Well, y'all, everyone that's watching us, start getting those questions ready.
All right. Last but not least.
Absolutely not least.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll keep this relatively brief. You know, there's a lot of overlapping themes here with expansion, although it's all different. So we're going to talk a little bit about Europe here. Just to quickly, when we talk about Europe, a lot of the time we're speaking about the EU5, which is the UK, Germany, Spain, France, and Italy. There are other marketplaces for Amazon that have good opportunities, but we like to start there. Amazon is the #1 platform in all of these marketplaces. And quite frankly, I think it's a really good place to be. You know, over these past 2 years, we've seen lots of growth in these marketplaces. A surprising amount of successful Amazon brands aren't selling in mainland Europe, even if some are going to the UK. And what I want to do is just take you step by step for when we're doing expansion, how the process we go through to see if it's right for you, but also if it's right for you, how to do it. So I'm going to take you step by step through our process. We're totally transparent with this. I've been doing expansions now for 5 years. For the first few years, they were very ad hoc. You know, we just say next step, next step, next step. And 6 months later, you know, we're hitting a lot of mini roadblocks. So what I've done is I created a process for us just to lay this out. Selling in Europe, I'd say, is somewhere in between the challenges you find in Mexico or LATAM and Japan. And it's not as easy as it sounds like to sell in the Middle East. It's somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of little steps that we want to break down for you. So I'm going to run through those right now. So let me share my screen here. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, thanks for confirming, Ramiro. Okay, so yeah, so just a quick intro. AMZ Advisors, we've been around for about 10 years. We've worked with over 500 brands. AMZ Global, which is the division that I'm a partner in, you know, we focus solely on expansions and helping brands assess their opportunity and basically go through the expansion process and further grow brands that want to leverage international marketplaces. So as I mentioned, you know, as Ramiro mentioned, we do all sorts of cross expansions from, you know, Australia to US, Europe to US, US to Europe. Today, I'm going to be focusing on entering Europe, rightly so, because I think if it's a market you guys have considered selling in the past, now is the time to really consider it. Even 3 or 4 years ago, going to Europe was really a first mover strategy. This year, we've seen it's actually a place where you can make, you know, a good amount of money. You know, we have brands that are, you know, generating upwards of 100K more across Europe on a monthly basis now, where a few years ago that would have been quite rare. The opportunity is definitely, now is the time to really see if your product is right to sell in Europe. So how do we assess opportunity? Now, a lot of you have probably heard of software tools like Jungle Scout, Helium 10. You know, these tools are fine for looking at what types of opportunities you could see in European countries. We have a very specific process and way we like to look at opportunity. You know, you might notice that there's a bit of a data overload when you're just kind of like using a Helium 10 plugin and trying to figure out, okay, does my product work here? Does it fit? So what I want to do is show you exactly how we look at opportunity in these marketplaces. So the first thing we do is we have to figure out in the EU5 marketplaces, so that means in German, Italian, Spanish, French, and English in the UK, what is your market? We like to say that keywords are markets. So what we do is we look at your products and we assess what's the customer journey in each marketplace. How would they arrive to purchase your product? And you'll see that there's some different customer search behavior if you go from Italy to Germany to arrive at the same product. So the first thing we need to do is establish what your keyword markets are. After we do that, you can't see this here, but we look at the last 2 years, the size of that niche market that your product sells in. And so what we want to understand is like the trend in this market. And also, is there seasonality? Is there a particular month that a product sells really well? In Europe in the summertime, consumers might buy different things than they do in the wintertime. So we look at the past 2 years to understand and assess your market. So that's where we get the general opportunity at the marketplace level. We then identify your competitors, who's already there, who's already selling, how successful are they, particularly what's the click-through rate and conversion rate. And this is really important because for us, I'm all about, before you do an expansion, know roughly how much money you could make. And in order to do that, the conversion rate is super important for you to understand if your product, how many visits do you need to essentially to get a sale for your product. The last thing we'll do is we'll look across 10 competitors in your market, in each marketplace, and understand their revenue trajectory over 2 years. This allows us to get a sense of how quickly we can expect your sales to grow in a particular market. There's going to be a lot of difference between if you're trying to expand, a product that has only been on the US market, for instance, for 6 months versus 5 years and has thousands of reviews. That product with thousands of reviews will scale quicker, even in a European market. So, we recommend that, before considering expansion, your product has some sales history and maturity. But considering those factors, we take this and we create a formula to be able to forecast what your opportunity would be given a certain amount of advertising spend. So yeah, this is just a quick overview of some of those smaller pages. This is one of our proprietary ways of looking at opportunity across a marketplace. And we're going to keep going here. Okay, so after looking at these KPI points and developing a formula based on the niche category that we assess in each marketplace, we do the forecasting for you and we try to make it as accurate as possible. I think this is a really important step. I'm all for those of you out there, if any of you are like, I don't care, I want to get there first and sell in Italy and just tell me how to do it and go see how it goes. That's fine. When you're working with us, we want to really make sure that you have a sense of what could be expected before you even embark on your expansion journey. And so, we'll go through and we'll help forecast, given seller central fees, given all of the fees you can expect, storage, what you can expect in your first year. We send it like a very conservative forecast, just so you have an idea of what this actually looks like if you're considering investing a significant amount of resources in this expansion, or you're building out a new division. I think forecasting is a really important part of what we do. It's never perfect, but we try to make it as accurate as possible, given the size of your products, and just from an Amazon standpoint, what you can expect in terms of revenue by the end of the year. And we do this across the EU5 marketplaces. So let's just say we have step one, which is assessing your market opportunity, understanding what your customer search markets would be in each European country, being able to forecast, okay, so I know after 12 months, this is more, if my product's successful here and we have a sound advertising strategy, this is how much money we can make. I think it's a good idea. Let's go. Now, when we look at these markets, we'll decide what your target country market would be. In a lot of cases, it's Germany, if you're talking about mainland Europe, because it's the biggest market in mainland Europe. However, for a particular type of product, there might be a reason why having your home market be Italy or having your home market be Spain might make more sense for the type of product you're selling. Based on the opportunity, we're able to decide what is your home market going to be. And once we decide that, that's pretty much where we would suggest you starting to house your inventory to fulfill across Europe. We recommend having a home country across the EU5 and not sending all of your stock to all of these countries at once. I know brands that do that. I know brands that have done that successfully. I think, you know, we normally recommend figuring out the customs clearance and importing and packaging for one of these countries first. And once we decide what that target country is, we develop your 3PL, FBA, and FBM strategy. Now, this is one of the areas where I speak to so many brands that are interested in expanding and have given no thought to this whatsoever. But it's something we like to bring up really early in our process, which is, how are you going to send stock to Europe? Do you have a distribution network in Europe already? A lot of mature brands do. That poses its own challenges, meaning that you send and there's other distributors that distribute on your behalf in Europe. Does your product not have any sales history whatsoever in Europe? You know, we want to figure out, are you going to be making several small shipments per quarter to Europe? Are you going to make one big massive shipment and then send, you know, products from a warehouse into FBA or around Europe from there? So we get into 3PL, FBA, FBM strategies really, really early. Given your IPI score, which is how long your inventory could potentially sit in Amazon FBA, we normally recommend having a 3PL strategy in tandem with your FBA strategy. Our partnership network is extensive in Europe, and so depending on the country you're in, you know, my team will make recommendations to you for, hey, this is going to be a great partner to help you scale your business in Europe. You can send your stock there directly, and then we'll decide what the FBA amounts are going to be in that target country based on your storage capacity in FBA and how quick we think the goods will sell. So yeah, FBA, FBM strategies, think about it, really important. Okay, content strategy. This is another thing we look at. I think, you know, in the UK, you can get away with good content that if you have a US listing. We definitely recommend SEO optimization at the country level. The UK search behavior will be different than American consumer search behavior. And so making sure you're optimized in that country is important. I'm going to focus a little bit more on mainland Europe here because I think this is one of the more you know, complex things to think about. These markets are very different. In the beginning, using Amazon translation for your listings and having, I guess, like what we consider really nice, high quality content from the US selling in European countries, there's a degree of success that you can achieve doing this. And so in the beginning, we do recommend that. But in the background, we're always figuring out, okay, how are we going to continue to build in this market? You know, one of the things that I normally think about is, I use as examples all the time are, okay, products that, you know, you have lifestyle images in a kitchen. You know, we definitely recommend in the medium and long term, if you're selling in Germany, get some German kitchens in your photos. I know it might seem like a little thing, but ultimately, you know, consumer psychology, people buy things that they can imagine in their own homes. And so if you have this fancy modern kitchen in the US and you're using that lifestyle images to sell products in Italy, where Italian kitchens are very particular to how they're set up, you might not be getting certain sales from consumers. So over time, you know, we're assessing what this content strategy should be, what best practices are of your main competitors in these marketplaces, and we're making recommendations and helping you design out localize the content so you could continue having success in these markets. Now, I'm going to go back and repeat what I said, which is you can experience a degree of success with just high quality images that come from the US, regardless of whether you've updated lifestyle. But over time, we do want to be localizing and continuing to penetrate your target marketplaces. Okay, ad plan. This is pretty generic. I've heard everyone on this call say already that that advertising bids are cheaper in Mexico than they are in the US. They're cheaper in Canada than they are in the US. Dana, I don't know about Japan off the top of my head if they're actually cheaper. I'd imagine they are a little bit. But yeah, in Europe, advertising is cheaper at the moment than it is in the US for most things. Yeah, I heard you. Dana, are you going to comment on that?
Oh,
I think if it comes to Japan, yes, I would agree that it's a bit cheaper than in the US, but not much.
Okay, yeah. Europe, the ads are cheaper. In fact, I would say that just from our experience, there's a lot of search markets where Europeans actually are searching for things that what the offerings are do not match how many searches are for certain products. And so what we're finding is that there's entire niche markets of keywords with bids in the cents, 10, 20 cents that actually have searches in Europe. And so we found in our expansions that advertising can be really cheap. Point being here is that we like to actually have the ad plan, help you understand the markets we're going to be advertising in before your product even arrives on the ground in Europe. You're going to know what that strategy is based on your parameters. And yeah, these are some of the softwares we use. I think this is some of the SEO. I think at this point, I'm just going to go to our blueprint development program, which is what we've developed and what the name of what I'm explaining is. We break it into 4 steps, which is pre-screening to make sure that your product is mature enough or can be successful in Europe, numbers, forecasting, and market research, like I just spoke about. And go-to-market partnerships. There's been a little bit of talk about importing. The language we often use in Europe is indirect representation. And we have, a partnership network that can help you do this, which is essentially to be able to send the product to Europe and have someone import it on your behalf as the importer of record, and then have the products go straight to your 3PL partner or FBA center. And just to give you a quick idea of what this looks like, at the end of our blueprint program, we want to deliver a really, really clear plan for you. My goal is that regardless of whether you choose to expand right away or choose to do it in a year, you have a really, really sound strategy that covers all of the steps. And so once we decide to go and expand together, there's no big surprises. Now our blueprint includes all the market research I was speaking about. We dive in really deep here. These are some of the graphs I was just showing you earlier. But even more importantly, which I just want to touch on before I end this, is we help actually, when you decide to go sell in Europe, come up with your partnership network. And so, when it comes to VAT and importing, having indirect representation, warehousing, logistics, depending on where you want to sell. In this case, the target marketplace is the Netherlands. It's not one of the bigger markets in Amazon, but it's also an option. We will develop this web for you, so you could basically see this as an extension of your business, and we do our best to make it as easy and transparent as possible. Yeah, I'm gonna end that there. I think this is a quick glimpse of what we're doing here at AMZ Global.
that's fantastic, Nick. I mean, very straightforward, very clear.
I guess that wasn't very brief. Now that I look at the time.
Listen, it wasn't brief, but it was informative.
Okay,
right? That's what we want. All right, let's get with some Q&A before we all head out. We have a couple questions. Nick, I believe this one's for you because it came out during your presentation. From Abdullah, they say, are there some key points like localizing advertising and others? For example, Mr. Blair mentioned color makes sense in different areas differently. Is this for Europe? Have you found this to be the case?
Yes. In fact, I would say that one of the differences between doing market research in Europe is really investing the time to understand what your keyword market is going to be in each of the European countries in that language. And so, it's even more different than color and color. This is completely different languages in each of these European markets. So you're going to want to get that right. And you're going to want to also bid on the local language. So yes, the answer is yes.
I think that's actually super underutilized. Are you bidding in several languages for everyone that's living around the world that doesn't speak the local country, so the local language? So that's fantastic. Thank you. Dano, I have a question for you, which I think is very basic, but I want to expand on it. So the question is, can I use my US listings to sell on Amazon Japan? You briefly touched on it. Now, I have the experience in Mexico that sometimes we can bring in the listing, bring in the reviews, and sometimes we can't. Could you expand a little bit on that experience in Japan?
If you can bring in like a listing from another marketplace to Japan.
And carry over, I think most of us are concerned about reviews.
Yeah.
How difficult it is
basically
to
yeah, in theory it's all easy peasy, right? So in theory you can do that, and then you can upload your localized images in Seller Central. So in theory that's how it works, and I would say like 20% of the time it does work. The rest of the time there are complications where where an ASIN that we brought in from say US or UK to Japan, and then we start uploading images, then suddenly they don't show up, or suddenly they show up in the US. So there can be complications to kind of localize your US listing, for example. But there is always a solution to that. So the final answer is yes, you can bring in your existing ASIN and your existing reviews, and you can localize your listing with Japanese images. But there can be some challenges involved in that, yes.
Awesome. You know what? I will extend, because I have the exact same issues, sometimes in Mexico. I'll extend that question to Nick. Nick, do you often see issues in translating or passing over reviews from US marketplace to Europe?
Yeah, I wouldn't for Europe. We don't. I think we have more success in general for the exporting of the listing than probably Dano experiences in Japan. But yeah, there's complications sometimes. I think it really depends on what we're doing. A lot of the time, if there's previous distribution networks of people of other companies that have owned listings in Europe, that can make things a little bit let's just say complicated. Our goal is ultimately to get through it and to win the listings back. But if there were previous sellers in these marketplaces, then that could be a potential error. But yeah, the catalog on Amazon used to be, I'd say, relatively not user friendly, but had less kinks than it does these days. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel with getting these catalogs organized, but the groundwork, to put through getting there is it's more than most people agree probably should be.
All right, that's perfect. Nick, thank you. Steven commented, your German product description will be at least twice the number of characters. So that's that's funny. I have one question to wrap this up. It came up several times during the presentations, and I think it's something that we all briefly touched on, but just so everyone can walk away with full sort of summary. Guys, how quickly can I get up and running in your marketplaces? I'll start within Mexico from the US, up and running within 30 days. Easy peasy. Kick it away to you guys. I don't know, Dano, if you want to start. How quickly I'm a US-based seller. How quickly can you get me up and running in Japan?
I would say within 2 weeks.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That does not include your brand registry and to register your trademark. But let's say your goods are on this side of the planet. It's very fast. You can just ship stuff over. It can be in the Amazon warehouse. The listing can be there. I mean, of course, optimization and making things perfect is a whole different story. But just to get up and running, 2 weeks can be done.
Yeah, I mean if you already have the product there, we can get up and running quickly. I fully agree with that. What about you, Nick?
Okay, well, so considering I just told everybody to come up with a plan,
Yeah.
It's so our planning stage on average takes 6 to 8 weeks just to plan what that expansion should look like. Now, doesn't mean that it can't be faster if you already have a plan. What you're going to be waiting for most of in Europe is VAT and if getting the VAT registration. And so just because if you don't have VAT yet and you need to apply in a European country, you need to give yourself a time frame of 6 to 8 weeks. So what we try to aim for from day one is getting your first sales going through in the first 90 days, but it's closer probably to 60 to 70 days if all things go to plan. So
that's fantastic, and you're getting a VAT number and everything. Guys, if no one else has any more questions, I think this is a fantastic spot to close it out. Any last words from either one of you two? Nick?
Thank you guys for your time.
Cool. You know anything you want to say before we head out?
Yeah. It's been a pleasure to join this webinar and to be in the same room with you, fantastic fellas. So yeah, thanks so much, and let's expand.
Awesome, Dano. Thank you very much, guys. Everyone that's still here, still listening to us, thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for listening, and hopefully you're walking away with a better panorama of how to expand basically to everywhere. So everyone have a wonderful day. Remember, this will be uploaded. You'll get a link to your emails in case you want to get the cliff notes. And everyone have a wonderful day.